Let me ask you a question. Have you ever looked at someone who seemed to have everything, money, freedom, opportunities, and thought, what do they have that I don't? Most of us assume it's luck. Or maybe they were born into privilege. Or perhaps they just got a lucky break we never received. But let me tell you the truth. The difference is not always in the money they were born with. The difference is in the mindset they live with. You see, there are two kinds of mindsets in this world: scarcity and abundance. Scarcity says, there's not enough. I can't do it. I'll lose everything. Better play it safe. Abundance says, there's always more. I can learn. I can grow. I can create opportunities. I can attract what I need. Which voice do you listen to? I'll give you a story. There were two friends who both dreamed of starting businesses. One said, I can't risk it. What if I lose my savings? What if I fail? So he stayed in the same job year after year, waiting for the right time. The other friend said, I might fail, but I'll learn, and maybe, just maybe, I'll succeed. He took the leap. The first friend is still waiting. The second friend now runs a company that provides jobs to dozens of people. What was the difference? Not intelligence, not luck, not even money. The difference was mindset. Scarcity will keep you stuck in survival mode. It makes you hoard what little you have because you're afraid you'll never get more. It keeps you saying someday but never taking action. Abundance, on the other hand, opens doors you never saw before. It allows you to give when others cling. It pushes you to grow when others shrink back. And that mindset, just that shift, can attract wealth, opportunities, and freedom into your life. Think about this. Have you ever noticed how people with a scarcity mindset say things like, I can't afford that, or that's impossible for someone like me? Meanwhile, people with an abundance mindset ask, how can I afford this? What would it take for me to make it happen? One closes the door. The other looks for keys. Let's be real. Many of us were raised in scarcity. We were told, money doesn't grow on trees. Don't ask for too much. Be realistic. And without realizing it, those phrases built walls around our potential. But here's the good news. Walls can be torn down. Scarcity is learned, and anything learned can be unlearned. So how do you break free? First, you must catch yourself in the act. Listen to the words you say to yourself. When you hear, I can't, stop and ask, is that true or is that fear talking? Second, surround yourself with abundance thinkers. If everyone around you is saying, it's impossible, find people who are saying, why not? Energy is contagious. Fear spreads, but so does faith. Third, practice gratitude. This might sound simple, but it's powerful. When you focus on what you already have, you create space for more. Gratitude shifts your energy from lack to possibility, and possibilities attract wealth. Think of money like water. If you clutch water in your fist, it slips away, but if you hold your hand open, more can flow through. That's abundance. And finally, take action. Abundance is not about sitting still and hoping. It's about daring to step out. Maybe you take a risk. Maybe you start that project. Maybe you learn a new skill. The point is, action creates momentum, and momentum attracts opportunity. Remember, wealth is not just money. It's freedom. It's choice. It's peace of mind. And those things are only possible when you break free from scarcity. So I ask you, are you ready to let go of fear? Are you ready to stop playing small? Are you ready to live in abundance? Because your future doesn't depend on the money in your bank. It depends on the belief in your mind. Scarcity whispers, stay safe. Abundance shouts, go build. Scarcity says, there's not enough. Abundance says, there's always more. Scarcity locks the door. Abundance hands you the key. And when you choose abundance, wealth won't just be something you chase. It will be something you attract. The question is, will you choose it today? Here are some key points related to this. Scarcity mindset limits growth. Abundance mindset creates opportunities. Wealth is attracted by beliefs and actions, not luck. Word-shaped mindset. Replace I can't with how can I? Surround yourself with abundance thinkers to reprogram your beliefs. Gratitude shifts focus from lack to possibility. Taking action builds momentum that draws wealth and freedom. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at a crossroad, one path leading into a wide, open field filled with opportunities, and the other into a dark, narrow tunnel where every step feels heavy and uncertain. Most people don't even realize which path they are on because the difference is invisible. It's all in the mind. This is what we call scarcity versus abundance. Scarcity whispers to you in ways so subtle you hardly notice it. It tells you not to try, not to risk, not to dream too big because you might fail. It convinces you that there's not enough to go around, that money is limited, that success belongs to others, not you. Abundance, on the other hand, is like stepping into the light. It tells you that even if you fall, there's always another way. It assures you that there are opportunities everywhere, waiting to be seen by those who dare to look. It's not about the money you currently have. It's about the mindset you carry into the world. I remember a man I once knew who grew up in a small town with very little. His parents worked tirelessly just to keep food on the table. Every conversation at home revolved around money, but always in the language of lack. We can't afford that. Don't waste what we have. Be grateful for the little you've got. These words became the soundtrack of his mind. When he grew older, even though he had a decent job and steady income, he never felt free. He saved everything, not with joy but with fear. He turned down opportunities to learn new skills because he was afraid of wasting time. He never invested in himself because he thought, what if I lose it all? On the outside, he was surviving. On the inside, he was trapped. This is the prison of scarcity. It's not just about having less money. It's about living in constant fear of losing what you have. Now contrast that with another story. A young woman I met once had the same beginnings, limited resources, a family that struggled, but she saw things differently. Instead of thinking, we'll never have enough, she started asking, how can I create more? When she wanted to go to college but had no money, she didn't say, it's impossible. She asked, what scholarships can I apply for? Who can I learn from? What skills can I build to earn while I study? Her questions opened doors that her circumstances tried to close. She worked 2 part-time jobs, applied for every scholarship she could find, and networked with mentors who saw her determination. Eventually, she not only graduated, but built a career that allowed her to give back to her family. The difference between her and the man I mentioned earlier wasn't intelligence or luck. It was mindset. When asked, why me? The other asked, why not me? Scarcity convinces you to hold on tightly. But the tighter you hold, the more life slips away. It's like trying to clutch water in your fist. It runs through your fingers no matter how hard you squeeze. Abundance, however, is about opening your hand. It's about trusting that more water will flow if you allow it. Think about the words we use when we're trapped in scarcity. We say things like, I can't afford it. I'm not good enough. It's too risky. Someone else is already doing it. These words build invisible walls around us. They keep us safe, but they also keep us small. Abundance asks a different set of questions. Instead of I can't, it asks, how can I? Instead of it's too risky, it asks, what could I learn if I try? Instead of someone else already did it, it asks, what unique way can I do it? Do you see the difference? One closes a door. The other looks for keys. When you live in scarcity, your focus is always on what you lack. And the more you focus on lack, the more lack you see. It becomes a cycle, a lens through which you view the world. But when you shift into abundance, you begin to see possibilities you never noticed before. The same world, the same circumstances, but a different vision. I once heard someone say, scarcity isn't about the size of your bank account. It's about the size of your vision. That struck me, because there are people with millions who still live in scarcity, terrified of losing it, constantly comparing themselves, never satisfied. And there are people with far less who live in abundance, generous, open, and confident that more will come. Which life would you rather live? Think about it this way. 2 gardeners are given the same piece of land. The one with a scarcity mindset looks at the soil and says, this ground is dry. Nothing will grow here. I'll just save the little water I have. The one with an abundance mindset says, What if I till the soil? What if I plant seeds? What if I find a way to collect rainwater? One gives up before trying. The other creates a garden. And soon, the one who planted has more food than he needs, while the other remains hungry. Life is like that. The ground is the same, the resources are the same, but the mindset determines the outcome. Many people don't realize that abundance is a choice. You don't wait until you're rich to adopt it. You adopt it now, with whatever you have, wherever you are. Abundance begins with the belief that more is possible. It begins with asking better questions. It begins with refusing to let fear dictate your decisions. Yes, you may stumble. Yes, you may fail. But even failure is not the end for someone who thinks abundantly. Failure becomes a teacher, a stepping stone, a clue toward a better strategy. Scarcity calls failure proof that you were never enough. Abundance calls failure proof that you are growing. And here's the most important truth. Your mindset not only shapes your reality, it attracts your reality. People who think abundantly carry an energy that draws opportunities, mentors, and even money toward them. They are open to connections, open to learning, open to risk. People who think in scarcity push opportunities away because they're too afraid to grab them. They miss out not because they weren't capable, but because they never tried. So I ask you now, where have you been living in scarcity? Where have you been telling yourself it's not enough? Where have you been holding back out of fear? And imagine what would happen if you replaced those words with abundance. Imagine if you started saying, there's always more. I can learn. I can grow. I can create. What doors would open? What dreams would suddenly feel possible? What life could you begin to build? The truth is, the difference between those who live small and those who live free isn't always found in talent, intelligence, or even hard work. It's found in the decision to step out of scarcity and step into abundance. And that decision is available to you right now, in this moment. If you dare to take it, picture this. You're sitting quietly at home and your thoughts drift to your dreams. Maybe it's starting a business, moving to a new city, or investing in something you've always wanted to try. But then, almost instantly, another voice cuts in. What if I lose everything? What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? That voice is not the truth. It's fear disguised as caution. And the worst part is, many of us have lived with that voice for so long. We start believing it's who we are. This is how scarcity operates. Not just in your wallet, but in your words, your choices, and the way you see yourself. I once met a man who had been offered a chance to partner in a small company. The investment required was not huge, but for him, it felt like a mountain. He had saved that money for years, and the thought of risking it made his stomach turn. He asked himself over and over, what if it doesn't work out? What if I lose it all? In the end, he said no. Years later, that company became a multi-million-dollar business. The man who said no stayed at his job, earning the same paycheck, with the same fear, telling himself he made the safe choice. But was it really safe? Or did scarcity rob him of the opportunity to grow? Now contrast that with a story I heard of a young mother. She worked long hours, barely making enough to cover rent and food. But she carried something powerful. She believed she could always find a way. When someone introduced her to an online course about digital marketing, she hesitated. She didn't really have the extra money, but instead of asking, what if I lose it, she asked, what if this is the key that changes everything? She took the risk, studied late at night after putting her kids to sleep, and within a year, she built a side business that eventually allowed her to quit her job. Was it easy? No. Did she face doubt? Absolutely. But she leaned on abundance, on the idea that every skill, every connection, every step could multiply her possibilities. You see, the difference between scarcity and abundance is often not about circumstances, but about the questions we ask ourselves. Scarcity asks, what if I fail? Abundance asks, what if I succeed? Scarcity says, I can't afford this. Abundance asks, how can I afford this? Scarcity shuts the door before you even knock. Abundance looks for keys, windows, and sometimes builds a new door altogether. The words you speak to yourself are powerful. They become the architecture of your life. Think about how often we repeat phrases like, that's impossible, I could never do that, or people like me don't get those chances. These words are not harmless. They shape your decisions. They carve your future. The scarcity mindset thrives on these limitations, keeping you small because small feels safe. But safe does not create growth, and safe never builds wealth. One of the most dangerous aspects of scarcity is that it feels rational. It dresses up as wisdom. When someone says, "Don't take risks, don't waste your money, don't dream too big," it sounds like advice. But really, it's fear passing itself off as wisdom. The truth is, every breakthrough, every innovation, every fortune was created by someone who decided to question fear. As Thomas Edison once said, "I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Scarcity would have told him to quit after the first failure. Abundance told him to keep going until he found the one way that did. Let me ask you, how many times have you let fear talk you out of something you wanted? How many times did you say, "It's not the right time," or "I'll wait until I'm ready"? The painful truth is, there is no perfect time. Waiting for certainty is another way scarcity keeps you stuck. Abundance is about stepping into uncertainty with faith that you'll learn, adapt, and grow along the way. There's a powerful analogy that explains this. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a river. On the other side is the life you want, the freedom, the wealth, the opportunities. Scarcity says, "Don't step into the water, you might drown." So you stay on your side, safe but unfulfilled. Abundance says, "Step in, take the first stone, then the next." You may slip, but you'll find your footing. And as you keep moving, stone by stone, you eventually reach the other side. The water was never the enemy. Standing still was. It's important to realize that abundance is not blind optimism. It doesn't mean ignoring risks or pretending challenges don't exist. Abundance is about facing the same risks, but choosing to focus on possibilities instead of limitations. It's the difference between seeing a glass as half empty or half full, yes, but it's deeper than that. It's realizing that even if the glass is half empty, you have the power to refill it. I once read about two salesmen who were sent to a remote village where no one wore shoes. The first reported back, "Terrible market. Nobody here wears shoes." That's scarcity. The second salesman reported, "Incredible opportunity. Nobody here wears shoes yet." That's abundance. Same situation, same reality. Two completely different mindsets. Which one do you think became wealthy? When you begin to catch yourself speaking the language of scarcity, you can change it. Instead of saying, "I'll never be able to afford that," say, "What can I do to make it possible?" Instead of saying, "I'm not good enough," say, "What skills can I build to get better?" This shift may sound small, but it's massive. Words carry energy. Thoughts shape action. And actions create results. Fear will always be there. Scarcity will always try to whisper in your ear. But the choice of which voice you listen to, that choice is yours. And when you begin to consistently choose abundance, life starts to respond in kind. Opportunities appear. People come into your path. Ideas you never noticed before suddenly make sense. It's not magic, it's mindset. So the next time that voice inside you says, "What if I fail?" I want you to stop and ask, "What if I fly?" The next time it says, "There's not enough," I want you to remind yourself, there's always more where that came from. Because once you change the language of your mind, you change the direction of your life. And that is how you break free from scarcity and begin to attract wealth. Not by waiting for luck, but by choosing a new way of thinking, one decision, one belief, one word at a time. Think back to the voices you grew up with. Maybe it was a parent saying, "We can't afford that," or a teacher warning, "Don't set your hopes too high," or even friends laughing when you talk about your dreams. These words don't just disappear. They take root inside you. They grow into beliefs that shape your choices. And before you realize it, they become the walls of the box you live in. This is how scarcity is passed down. Not through money, but through language and mindset. The third key in breaking free is to notice those inherited words, to challenge them, and to replace them with new ones that build abundance instead of limiting it. I remember speaking with a man in his 40s who had always wanted to start a business. He was passionate about fitness, dreamed of opening a gym, and even had people encouraging him. But every time he thought about taking the leap, His father's old words came back. Business is risky. You'll lose everything. Better stick with a stable job. Those words had become a cage. He wasn't just fighting his own fear. He was carrying decades of inherited fear. When we talked, I asked him, "Are those your thoughts or your father's?" He paused for a long moment, and tears filled his eyes. For the first time, he realized that the limitations guiding his choices weren't even his own. They were borrowed beliefs, passed down without question. That realization alone was freeing, because once you see the cage, you can begin to break it. Contrast that with another story I once heard of a young woman who grew up being told, "We are poor, and that's just how life is." But she decided to rewrite the script. Every time that belief crept in, she asked herself, "Is that true, or is that just something I was told?" She began consuming books on success, watching motivational speeches, and surrounded herself with people who thought differently. Slowly, her inner dialogue changed. Instead of "we are poor," it became "I am capable of building wealth." Instead of "that's just how life is," it became "life is what I create to be." Today, she runs her own online business, supporting her family and proving that what you believe can either imprison you or set you free. Words like seeds. Scarcity words plant weeds of doubt, fear, and resignation. Abundance words plant gardens of hope, creativity, and courage. If you've ever said, "I can't afford it," you've planted scarcity. If you've ever said, "How can I make this possible?" you've planted abundance. Both sentences come from the same situation, but create entirely different futures. The first closes your mind. The second opens it to solutions. One sentence kills possibility before it has a chance to breathe. The other sentence invites possibility in and lets it grow. A friend once told me, "My biggest breakthrough came when I realized the words I repeated every day were shaping the life I lived." He explained how he used to wake up saying, "I'm tired, I'm broke, I'm stuck." His days mirrored those words. Then he started shifting his language. He began saying, "I'm learning, I'm building, I'm moving forward." At first it felt silly, like lying to himself, but slowly his actions began to match his new words. He looked for opportunities instead of excuses. He said yes to small risks. He connected with mentors. Within a year, his income doubled, and more importantly, his outlook transformed. The words were the switch that flipped his life from scarcity to abundance. Think of the mind like a GPS. If you keep typing in "I can't," "I won't," "it's impossible," the GPS will guide you right back to scarcity, no matter where you try to go. But if you start entering "I can," "I will," "it's possible," the GPS recalculates and begins showing you routes you never saw before. The road is the same, but your directions have changed. That's the power of language. And this is not about blind positive thinking. It's not about pretending challenges don't exist. It's about choosing the words that open doors instead of shut them. When scarcity says, "It's too late for me," abundance replies, "It's never too late to start." When scarcity says, "I'll never catch up," abundance replies, "Every step forward counts." These aren't just cliches. They are mental commands that train your brain to see opportunity instead of obstacles. I'll never forget a conversation with a young entrepreneur who had failed in his first 2 businesses. Scarcity was screaming at him, "You're not cut out for this. Give up." But he kept saying to himself, "Every failure is a lesson. I'm getting closer." That small shift in words kept him moving, and on his 3rd attempt, he built a thriving company. He told me later, "If I had listened to the first voice, I'd still be working in a job I hated." It wasn't the failure that almost killed me. It was a story I told myself about the failure. The truth is, scarcity thrives in silence. It grows strongest when you don't question it, when you let those inherited phrases run unchecked in your mind. The way to weaken it is to bring it into the light, to catch it in the act, and to challenge it with abundance. Ask yourself, whose voice is this? Is it mine or someone else's? Is it a truth or just a fear? What new story could I tell myself instead? The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. At first, abundance words may feel strange, even fake. But repetition creates belief, and belief creates reality. Just like lifting weights builds muscle, Lifting your language builds mindset. Over time, your new words will feel natural, and scarcity will lose its grip. So let me ask you, what words have you been repeating to yourself? Have they been building your future or limiting it? What story have you been living inside, and what new story could you choose? Because if you want to break free from scarcity and attract wealth, it starts with the language you allow to shape your mind. Change your words, and you change your world. Imagine standing in front of a mirror looking at yourself, but instead of seeing who you are now, you see who you used to be. You see the times you failed, the times you were rejected, the moments you felt small. For so many people, that mirror never changes. They keep looking at the same reflection of their past, and it convinces them that the future will be no different. This is how scarcity chains us. It ties us to what went wrong yesterday and blinds us to what could go right tomorrow. The fourth key to breaking free is learning to reframe failure and rejection, not as proof that you're stuck, but as the stepping stones to growth and success. I once met a young man who wanted to be a writer. He poured his heart into his first book, spent years working on it, and when he finally sent out to publishers, the rejections came flooding back. Dozens of them. Each letter felt like another stone being placed on his back. Scarcity whispered in his ear, "See, you're not good enough. You should stop wasting your time." And he almost did. But then one day, he read about J.K. Rowling and how she was rejected 12 times before Harry Potter was published. He read about Stephen King, who had so many rejections that he hung them on a nail in his wall until the nail bent under the weight. These weren't failures. They were evidence that rejection is part of the process. That realization was like breaking a chain. He reframed his rejections as badges of honor, proof that he was still in the arena, still daring, still alive in his dream. Eventually, his book found a publisher, and while it didn't sell millions, it opened doors to speaking, teaching, and coaching. He told me later, the rejection wasn't the end. It was the training ground. Think about Thomas Edison, who famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Imagine if he had looked at every attempt as proof he was wasting his time. We might be sitting here in the dark. But instead, he reframed failure into discovery, and that shift of perspective literally changed the world. The truth is, failure is only final when you stop trying. Until then, it's feedback. It's information. It's a compass pointing you closer to what will work. Scarcity tells you failure is a wall. Abundance shows you it's a door, just one you haven't figured out how to unlock yet. A friend of mine once started a small bakery. She had no formal business training, just a love for baking and a dream of creating a place where people felt at home. Her first year was brutal. Mistakes in pricing, wasted ingredients, staff turnover. She lost money and almost gave up. Scarcity screamed, "This is proof you're not cut out for business." But she chose to reframe the story. Instead of saying, "I failed," she told herself, "I'm learning what doesn't work." Every mistake became a note. Every loss became a lesson. By her third year, she had adjusted her recipes, trained her staff better, and created systems that worked. Today, her bakery is thriving, and she smiles when she talks about those early failures. "They were my tuition," she says. "I paid in mistakes, but the lessons were priceless." The way you interpret failure defines the path you walk. Scarcity sees it as evidence of who you are, a loser, a quitter, not enough. Abundance sees it as evidence of where you are, on the journey, in the middle, not finished yet. When you stop letting failure define your identity and start letting it guide your progress, everything changes. Suddenly rejection isn't personal, it's directional. It's not, "You're not good enough." It's, "Try another way." Think about Michael Jordan, often celebrated as the greatest basketball player of all time. He once said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times, I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed." What if he had let those misses convince him he was a failure? The world would never have seen his greatness. His story proves that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the raw material of success. Without it, there is no mastery, no breakthrough, no triumph. But here's the trap most people fall into. They make failure permanent in their minds. They replay the rejection like a movie on repeat, adding more emotion every time they watch it. They turn a single no into a lifelong narrative of not being worthy. And slowly, they stop trying. They don't realize that the difference between those who achieve abundance and those who stay stuck in scarcity is not talent, luck, or intelligence. It's interpretation. It's the story they tell themselves about what failure means. A man once shared with me how he was denied a promotion he desperately wanted. For months, he sank into bitterness, convinced he wasn't good enough. But then one day, he flipped the perspective. Instead of seeing it as rejection, he saw it as redirection. That denial pushed him to sharpen his skills, to take courses, to build connections. A year later, he landed an even better opportunity. He said, "That no turned out to be the biggest yes of my career." Scarcity had almost convinced him to give up, but abundance helped him see the gift hidden inside the setback. Failure hurts. Rejection stings. There's no denying that. But pain is not the enemy. It's the teacher. It's a fire that refines, the storm that shapes, the pressure that forms diamonds. Every story of wealth, success, and abundance is written with chapters of failure. The question is, will you stop at those chapters, or will you keep writing until you reach the breakthrough? So let me ask you, what failure have you been carrying like a weight on your back? What rejection has become a label you stuck on yourself? What would happen if you reframed it? Not as the end of your story, but as proof that you are in the middle of becoming. What if the very thing you thought disqualified you was actually preparing you? Because when you choose to reframe failure and rejection, you rip the script out of scarcity's hands. You take control of the narrative. You tell yourself, this is not where it ends. This is where I grow. And in that moment, you turn the mirror around. You no longer see the reflection of your past mistakes. You see the outline of your future victories. And suddenly, abundance doesn't feel like a dream. It feels like a reality you are walking toward, one reframed step at a time. Picture yourself walking into a room where everyone seems to have something you don't. Confidence, wealth, connections, or maybe just that spark in their eyes that tells you they're moving forward while you're standing still. In those moments, scarcity sneaks in with its sharp whisper. You don't belong here. You're not enough. And too many people believe it. They shrink, they retreat, they hold back from opportunities because they've convinced themselves that abundance is for others, not for them. But the truth is, the most powerful key to breaking free is realizing that you are already worthy, that abundance is not something you have to earn to perfection or luck. It's something you align with by believing you deserve it and by acting from that belief even when you feel unready. I once spoke with a young man who dreamed of starting his own business. He had ideas scribbled in notebooks, vision boards on his wall, and even a few people interested in his product. Yet every time he got close to taking a leap, his inner voice said, "Who are you to do this? You're not smart enough, not experienced enough, not connected enough." He'd watch others launch businesses and think they had something special he lacked. But one day I asked him, what if the only difference between you and them is that they believed they were worthy to try? That question hit him like a storm. He realized he wasn't being held back by the market, by money, or by lack of opportunity. He was being held back by a silent agreement he had made with scarcity, the agreement that said, I am not enough. When he began to challenge that agreement, his energy shifted. He didn't suddenly become flawless. He simply decided to act in spite of the voice that told him not to. And that choice became the doorway to the life he had been waiting for. Abundance is not about being perfect. It's about showing up. Think about a child learning to walk. They stumble, they fall, they cry, and yet they keep trying. No child ever thinks, maybe walking isn't for me. They know instinctively that falling is part of the process, and they never doubt their worthiness to keep getting back up. But somewhere along the way, as adults, we lose that natural sense of deserving. We internalize messages from parents, teachers, bosses, or even society that whisper, stay small. Don't shine too brightly. Don't think too highly of yourself. These messages become walls, and we learn to live inside them. Yet abundance begins the moment you decide to stop apologizing for wanting more, stop shrinking to fit other people's comfort zones, and stop questioning whether you deserve a seat at the table. I once heard the story of a woman who wanted to become a public speaker. She had a powerful personal story that could inspire thousands. But every time she was invited to speak, she declined. "I'm not polished enough," she'd say. "People will see through me. I'm not like those other speakers." Then one day, she attended an event and listened to a man share his journey. He stumbled over his words, lost his place a few times, but spoke with raw honesty. And the audience loved him. They weren't impressed by his perfection. They were moved by his authenticity. That moment changed her perspective. She realized she had been waiting for some magical day when she would feel worthy enough to step on stage. But worthiness was not something to be earned. It was something to claim. From then on, she said yes to opportunities, even when she felt nervous or underprepared. Over time, her confidence grew, but more importantly, her impact grew. She discovered that her imperfection was not a barrier, but a bridge. It made her human, relatable, and real. Scarcity thrives on comparison. It loves to remind you of who's doing better, who's ahead, who's younger, richer, smarter. It feeds off a lie that because they have, you cannot. But abundance operates differently. Abundance says, there's room for you too. It says, someone else's success does not diminish yours. It's like standing at a window watching fireworks. Just because one spark lights up the sky doesn't mean there's less room for yours. The sky is infinite. The opportunities in life are infinite. The only question is whether you will let scarcity convince you to stay in the shadows while others shine, or whether you will step forward and let your own light out. A businessman once told me how he almost turned down a life-changing deal because he didn't feel qualified. He said, "I was sitting in the meeting, surrounded by people with degrees, years of experience, impressive resumes, and there I was, just a guy with an idea and some determination. I thought about walking out. But then he remembered something his mentor told him. You don't have to be the smartest in the room. You just have to be the one willing to show up." He stayed, spoke from the heart, and to his surprise, they invested in him. That deal became the foundation of his company. Later, he laughed about how close he had come to letting scarcity steal that moment from him. This is why claiming your worth is non-negotiable. When you don't believe you are enough, you sabotage yourself before the world ever gets a chance to see what you have to offer. You don't apply for the job. You don't make the call. You don't share the idea. You don't take the step. You reject yourself before anyone else can. But when you begin to act from a place of worthiness, doors you thought were locked start to open. People respond to the energy of someone who knows they belong. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. It's the quiet confidence that says, I have something valuable to bring, and I'm not going to hide it. You might be wondering, but what if I try and fail? And here's the truth. You might, but failure does not cancel your worthiness. Rejection does not erase your value. A seed doesn't stop being a seed just because the first season wasn't right for growth. It still contains everything it needs. It just has to keep being planted until the soil and timing align. You are that seed. Your worth is built in, not earned by results. The question is not whether you are enough. The question is whether you will finally believe it long enough to see what happens when you act like it. So I ask you now, where in your life have you been waiting for permission to feel worthy? Where have you been shrinking, hesitating, or hiding because you convince yourself you don't measure up? And what would change if, starting today, you stopped asking for permission and started walking like you belong? Because the truth is, you already do. The moment you claim that, the chains of scarcity fall away and the flow of abundance begins to move through your life. There comes a moment in everyone's journey where the ideas are clear, the inspiration is strong, and the vision feels alive. Yet nothing changes because the final and most important step hasn't been taken: action. Abundance is not just a mindset you think about. It is something you must live, breathe, and walk into with bold steps. You can read all the books, listen to every speech, dream about freedom, and repeat affirmations in the mirror. But until you turn those thoughts into action, scarcity still wins. Scarcity loves dreamers who never move because it knows their lives will stay the same. Abundance belongs to those who take even the smallest action forward, even when they are scared, even when they are unsure, even when the outcome is not guaranteed. I once spoke with a man who had been studying investing for years. He could explain market trends, calculate risks, and talk endlessly about strategies. He told me, I'll invest when the time is right. But year after year, he waited. He wanted absolute certainty before he made his move. And do you know what happened? The years passed. Opportunities came and went, and his knowledge grew dusty from lack of use. He was like someone standing on the shore, studying the waves, analyzing the tide, but never stepping into the water. One day he realized that his desire for certainty was really just scarcity dressed up in caution. Scarcity had convinced him that mistakes were deadly, that failure was final. When he finally took action, he stumbled at first, made a few bad investments, but over time, he learned faster than he ever did from reading. Because knowledge without action is potential energy. But action is what sparks movement, growth, and real change. Think about it. A seed sitting in a packet can hold the potential for a tree, but until it's planted in the soil, watered, and exposed to the sun, it remains nothing more than potential. Many people live their lives as unplanted seeds, full of dreams, ideas, and talent that never take root because action is withheld. Scarcity whispers, what if it doesn't work? What if you lose? What if you fail? And abundance counters, what if it does work? What if you grow? What if the step changes everything? The truth is, you'll never know until you act, and that uncertainty is what keeps most people trapped in the scarcity cycle. A woman I knew wanted to change her life by starting a side hustle. She had the skills, the idea, and even encouragement from friends. But she hesitated, waiting for the perfect time. She told herself she'd start after she saved a little more money, after she felt more confident, after things at home were calmer. But the perfect time never arrived, because perfection is an illusion. Finally, one evening she looked at her children and thought, if I don't act now, I'm teaching them to wait too. That thought pierced her heart. She started that very week, messy and unsure, and slowly built momentum. It wasn't easy, but her courage to act despite imperfection created a ripple that changed her family's future. Later, she said, I realize abundance doesn't come to those who wait endlessly. It comes to those who begin. Scarcity convinces us to prepare forever, to wait for certainty, to demand guarantees before moving. But life doesn't work that way. You learn to swim by getting in the water, not by standing on the shore studying. You build confidence by stepping onto the stage, not by rehearsing endlessly in private. You grow wealth by making choices with the resources you have, not by waiting until you feel rich. Abundance isn't waiting for you to feel ready. It's waiting for you to take the leap. I remember hearing about a man who wanted to run a marathon. He had never been a runner, always doubted his endurance. But he made a decision. He signed up for the race before he was anywhere near prepared. Friends told him he was crazy, that he'd embarrass himself, but he used that commitment as fuel. Every day he trained, slowly increasing his distance. On race day, he wasn't the fastest, he didn't look the part, but he crossed the finish line. That moment changed him forever, not because he became a great runner, but because he proved to himself that action creates transformation. He said later, signing up was the hardest part. Everything after that was just follow through. This is a heart of abundance. The willingness to act when you're uncertain, to move when you're afraid, to begin when you feel unprepared. The world doesn't reward ideas. It rewards execution. History is not shaped by people who thought about changing things, but by people who took action and kept going. Every invention, every business, every breakthrough came from someone who refused to wait for perfect conditions. They chose to plant their seed, to step into the arena, to take imperfect action that eventually became extraordinary progress. Scarcity will always give you reasons to wait. It will remind you of your past failures, your lack of resources, the risks ahead. But abundance gives you reasons to move now. It reminds you that small steps add up, that mistakes teach you, that momentum builds confidence. Action is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Without it, abundance remains a theory. With it, abundance becomes reality. I once asked a group of people what one action they could take today to move toward their dream. Some said, make a phone call. Others said, apply for a position. One said, post my first video. Simple things, small steps. Yet when they committed to those actions, you could see the shift in their eyes, because deep down they knew that action breaks chains. It's the moment scarcity loses its grip and abundance begins to flow. So let me ask you now, what action have you been postponing? What dream have you been protecting by keeping it in the safety of your imagination, but never testing it in reality? What small step could you take today? Not next month, not next year, but today, to prove to yourself that you are moving toward abundance. Because abundance is not waiting for you in some distant future. It is waiting in the very next step you take. The journey from scarcity to wealth is not built on perfect plans, flawless execution, or waiting for stars to align. It is built on daily choices, small risks, consistent steps. Every call you make, every opportunity you chase, every time you choose courage over comfort, you are building the bridge to abundance. And while others may still be waiting for permission or certainty, you will be walking forward, imperfect but unstoppable, because you dare to act. Action is the final key, the one that unlocks the others. Without it, mindset is theory, language is empty, reframing is wasted, worthiness is untested. With it, all of them come alive. Abundance is not something you just think about. It's something you live, and the only way to live it is to act on it. So don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for certainty. Don't wait for someone else to tell you it's time. The time is now. The step is yours, and abundance is waiting on the other side of your action. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out at a horizon filled with possibility. Behind you lies scarcity, fear, doubt, the voices that told you to stay small. Ahead of you lies abundance, freedom, wealth, and a life you were born to live. The only thing between you and that horizon is one step, one choice, one action. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know the whole plan. You don't have to wait for tomorrow. You only have to begin. Begin today. Begin now. Because every moment you wait, scarcity wins. Every moment you hesitate, the dream shrinks. But every moment you act, abundance grows. Every moment you move, doors open. Every moment you choose courage, the universe responds. So I say it again, act now. Act with faith. Act with boldness. Act with the belief that you are worthy, that you are capable, that you are enough. Act even if your voice trembles, even if your legs shake, even if your heart pounds, because action is a spark that ignites abundance. You've listened long enough. You've dreamed long enough. You've waited long enough. This is your time. This is your moment. This is your life. Your support means everything. If this resonated with you, please share, and subscribe. And if you remember nothing else, remember this. Scarcity is a prison. Abundance is freedom. And the key has always been in your hands. Thank you for being here. See you in the next one.